first topic, which is the MOT, TDC, TAA joint venture deed discussion. And then item 2 and 3 will just bounce between myself and Kim just to provide an update on the status of flights and schedules, and then operational and safety updates for the airport. So I'll just share my screen here. Can everybody see that? Cool.
Thank you. All
right. So it is a bit rudimentary. I've had to copy and paste this just because it had some contact details of representatives at the Ministry of Transport. So I've just had to put it onto a Word document here so we can cut that out. So I'll start with a bit of background. A while ago, in discussions with our partners at the Ministry of Transport, there was ideas noted about the deed and the joint venture deed between Taupō District Council and the Ministry of Transport relating to Taupo Airport, and how that deed is now quite outdated in the scheme of things. So it was, I think the deed relates back initially right through to the 50s, with a current version being in place into the 70s. So it's quite old. Some of the wording, for anybody who's flicked through it recently, is quite old-fashioned and doesn't really make much sense anymore. So it's been really good. The ministry have actually come to all joint venture airports and kind of picked up that we all want to look at the deed and bring it into the modern era. So they've been really receptive to that. We've had some really good conversations initially around how we will do that. So just to give a bit of a background on this process for the committee, this is right at the start of things. So what's happened is we met with the ministry a week or so ago, myself, Kevin, Kim, and a couple of ministry representatives, and we just discussed the process of how we'll move forward. So that being, myself had a few comments and queries to make about the deed and how it relates to operating the airport from TDC/TAA's perspective. So I've got a couple of my points here in front of you that you can see. I'll present that to the committee now. You guys can flick through them, ask me any questions or comments that you may have. You may, I don't know how much of the deed you know, but if you do have any points yourself that you want to note down, then I can take those notes now. Then we'll go back to the ministry and have a round table discussion. So that will be not just us, but that will be all joint venture airports. We'll sit virtually around a table with the ministry reps, and we'll all voice our own ideas on bringing this deed forward. And the ministry may bring some to the table of their own, and we'll basically work together, come up with a draft review, which will then come back to the committee for comment, and then we'll proceed from there. If everybody's happy with the draft review, we'll move forward again. If there's things that we want to change, we can always go back and renegotiate that. So is that process, does that make sense for everybody?
Yes. Are you comfortable, the committee members? Do you feel you need an overview of the past deed, or just these updates will explain all? Do you think, Reece?
I think these updates can explain it. If people want me to bring up the deed, I can bring up the deed now and screen share it and just highlight. Instead, we won't go right through the whole deed, but I can highlight a few things that that I think are really outdated or need to change for our benefit for the most part.
When was it last reviewed?
1970s.
Okay.
It hasn't changed.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's really old fashioned. So
sorry, Reece, just through the chair, just to add to that, Chris, 1973 the deed was, it's incredibly out of date. I had the pleasure of reading through it the other day with Reece, working our way through it. Like Reece has said, this is the start of a journey. It's quite a long journey with MOT to work our way through this, and there'll be lots of opportunity for the committee to get over it, particularly those more trickier ones. We're aware of the ones that we've got issues with here. We're not aware of some of the clauses that other people have issues with, and that's the key piece of work that Reece and Kim will be doing tomorrow. And when they bring that back, there's another opportunity for the committee to go through that. Then the MOT will actually go away, and they will actually talk to their lawyers and come up with some standard deed agreements set, and they'll have schedules on the back of those, and each individual council is probably going to be a different schedule where we're special in that space. And once we get that, again, it'll come back through the committee, and then any final stuff that we wanted to sign off. So it's quite a long journey in that space, and plenty of opportunity to grow everyone and knowing and understanding what's in that deed.
Thanks, Kevin. That's great.
All right, so I'll start off. So do you guys want me to bring up the deed, or do you want me to just rattle through my stuff?
Just rattle through your stuff. I think, yeah,
I agree.
Be a protracted exercise to go through the whole deed when it's Kevin. I put my faith in both Kevin and yourself and the MOT, so I'm happy just to go through these points.
Yeah, great.
I totally agree.
I must say the MOT have actually been really, really good to work with. They've been super proactive about this stuff, so it's really, really good. Okay, so number one, there are a number of subjects referenced in the deed that can be amalgamated or even removed due to being outdated by modern practices. So as an example, and this does vary between JV partners, they're not all exactly the same, but one in ours, clause 5 in the deed comes up about rescue firefighting services, which historically were run by the Ministry of Transport. Now, back when this deed was written, we came under an aerodrome operating license, which is different now to what we come under, which is our 139 certification. So it suggests that if a rescue fire service is required, the ministry would provide that service for the meantime. Now, what the meantime is, I don't actually know.
We lost you for a minute, Reese.
So the point of this, so the point of this topic is that you could really amalgamate a number of clauses in the deed into one title, which comes under the operator, being TDC, and their ability to maintain the 139 certification requirements. So things like rescue firefighting come under that clause. And there's a number of other clauses which can be amalgamated into one. So in terms of the committee, it's probably not too much their involvement, but in terms of us as the operator, it makes it a lot cleaner and clearer as whose lines of responsibility around operating and maintaining compliance with our 139 certificate. Any questions on that?
No.
Cool. All right, so clause 2, item 1. So the deed suggests that while TDC has the right to issue licenses and leases, it actually says that we need Ministry of Transport approval to do so. Now, that is actually quite interesting because as far as I'm aware, and looking historically, that's not the case. So I've put that back to the ministry to say, do they actually feel that that is needed? If not, then can we get rid of it? So that's definitely something we'll bring up in our discussions with them. Item 2, again, this is another subject that fits under part 1, which is to come up with a clause that means that we as the operator will abide by the 139 certification requirements. Item 2 basically suggests that the ministry have said that TDC, TAA will not construct any buildings or towers, masts, poles that will impede flight movements. Now, that's quite silly given that we are the holder of the operating license. So it'd be like us shooting ourselves in the foot. So again, that can be removed and it just comes under the 139 certification requirement. Part 3, review of assets, both shared and individual, and create a better schedule in the deed to clarify who owns what and who is responsible for what. The current deed, the only schedule and summary they have has 3 parts, which is 3 parcels of land that make up the airport grounds. There is no mention of what buildings are responsibility of who maintains what. So we definitely need clarity on that point, and that is another topic which sits across the board with all our other JV airports as well. So they all feel the same way. So that'll be a good thing to get across the line, bit of clarity. Number 4, clause 20 and 21. So these both relate to the term of the deed and review periods of the deed. So interestingly, they have a clause 21, which is review of the deed. They have no timelines for review of the deed. So as you can 1973 was the last time it was reviewed. There's nothing actually to say when we should be reviewing. So a suggestion from my part is clause 20 and 21 could be amalgamated one clause, which would include a pre-agreed review period for both parties to allow development of the deed as time progresses. And we may fit that in line with other things that we have to review, such as our 139 certificate, safety management reviews, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, we don't want to do it at the same time, but we may look at the time periods we do those in and create a review template which works. I think something else which is important, which isn't mentioned in the deed at all, is a termination clause of some degree. Whether you call it a termination clause, I don't know, but a buyout option needs to be detailed, I think. So New Plymouth a few years ago moved away from the JV when they were doing considerably well, and since they've moved away from the JV, they have again actually come on leaps and bounds into becoming one of the biggest regional airports in New Zealand. So they do really well now. I think a bit of clarity in the deed around that process is good for both sides, because it will show us, a format of how to do things should it ever become the case that TDC feels that, the best thing for us is that we can carry the airport as a standalone entity. Then I think it's good having that documented. And then point 5, financial delegations and reporting. So the current deed is very lackluster in terms of detailing reporting timelines, timeframes, and formats. So I think this is a really good point in time for us to actually get something documented on how we report and keeping it nice and clean. We currently come under the Local Government Act for reporting, so bringing things more in line with something like that would be a smart move. Again, this is something across the board that all the other JV airports feel the same about. And then a side note on that is financial delegations. So we currently have the $10,000 spend limit, where we have to discuss spend with the ministry of more than $10,000. They are the ones also in strong agreement. This number is a little bit difficult to work with in modern times. Obviously in the 70s and the 50s it was quite different, but yeah, that is a topic that we're all keen to move forward and come up with a new way of looking at our financial delegations. Those are all our main ones. Really, I think the big thing of this, not just from us, but from all the other airports talking to them on the side, is that a whole new template needs to be created. And then we can actually have schedules that outline our individual differences between each JV agreement. TDC and the MOT is going to be a very different agreement than Westport or Wanganui, for example. So it would be good to have a broad template that is roughly the same, and then we have the ability to schedule our own individual differences. Is there any questions or comments on that or the review process that anybody has?
I think it'll be important to, once you get all the information back, have a workshop dedicated to this so we can thrash it out a bit more around the table.
Yeah, I think what's going to be good is the roundtable discussion between the JVs and the ministry is probably going to flush out a few other things that nobody's thought about. And the other side will be good to get a feeling of where the MOT are as well. And then coming to the table with the committee and doing a workshop on what changes we're looking at will be the next step, I think.
Yeah, through the chair, Chris, what we'll do is we'll have a look at the program that MOT have suggested, and I know that you have a meeting tomorrow on this, and we'll get back to you with a date, and we'll book that workshop in.
Okay.
Just through the chair, have we got a timeline on this at all, Reece or Kevin?
Not officially, no. We were the last cab off the rank to officially discuss this with the ministry, so we kind of had a bit of a shorter timeline than everybody else. They haven't put a timescale on it as such. It's kind of just a work in progress to make sure we get the best result for everybody coming out of it.
Yeah, through the chair, Kathy, I think that the clear intent from them was that they were pretty keen to move on as quickly as they could. So what I will ask is, Reece, in my meeting with the team tomorrow, is ask that very question so we can let you guys know. Cool.
Okay, and just Kevin, with your imminent departure, obviously you're going to be doing quite a lot of work alongside Reece on this. Is that correct?
Yeah, so through the chair, we'll be doing a fair bit of work with Reece, and we're looking at, so between Gareth and I are looking at the alternatives to make sure that we continue on and provide that support that's required from this level of the organisation. So, yeah.
Thank you for that.
All right, everybody happy with that?
Thank you.
Cool. Okay, I'll hand over to Kim for the next 2 points, and then I'll just jump in with any comments I may have as we go through.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Yeah, just with the relaxing of lockdowns, Air New Zealand are operating at approximately 90% of the regular timetable, and Southsia at 75%. They will be releasing their winter timetable soon, so hopefully by the next board meeting we'll have some understanding of how that looks. We certainly had an increase in passenger numbers over that summer period, obviously when Taupo was busy, and we see that influx in tourism. Obviously during the month of March, you know, we've hit Omicron, so passenger numbers have decreased, but then again that is reflected nationwide. But I think with Easter and school holidays coming up in a couple of weeks, we should start to see those passenger numbers beginning to rise again. And on a more positive note too, we continue to see a steady stream of private jets operating in and out of Taupo. You know, in the past we might have seen a couple a month, whereas now just about every second, third day, I'm getting an inquiry for apron parking. So that's really positive. Yeah. And just operationally, we've recently, I've just made a few notes here. We've recently refreshed the southern taxiway markings. While we meet regulatory requirements, our aim is to exceed these requirements. This is in addition to the recently installed 2.8 threshold holding position signs. And these taxiway markings, they really provide clearer visibility and guidance for taxiing traffic. So really just improving on our infrastructure. I've been working with the development project team, and we're starting to look at things like the relocation of the apron equipment, which is in conjunction with the new terminal build. Obviously with product delays and things, we just need to sort of keep the ball moving. The other thing, of course, is lease management for tenants relocating into the new terminal. So we just need to start, I'll start working with legal, preparing deeds of lease or licenses to occupy to facilitate tenants and that relocation. Also, we've set up temporary lighting for the new car parking area. So we were meant to have new street lights installed. Apparently they were ordered back in July, but unfortunately they haven't arrived. So I've just worked with our local electrician, and we've just got some temporary lighting in the interim. Okay. You may remember late last year we spent a little bit of money on our grass runway, and we improved just an area, just improved the surface because it is can be a little bit undulating in places. And so anyway, that strip has certainly taken off with rainfall, improving the surface and meaning a smoother strip for aircraft operations. So that's great. And this week, actually, we've got a skydiving event on, up to 50, I think it is, skydivers, canopies operating. So yeah, it will certainly be well used. Contingency planning around working with COVID. You know, we did this some time ago, obviously, around our business continuity plans. We've been working smarter by separating essential persons in different workspaces, which extends to the airport vehicle as well. And this, as I say, this just ensures our business continuity. Thankfully, I think most of us have been relatively okay, even though we have had COVID in some of our homes. But we have continued to have somebody present at the airport carrying out those runway inspections daily, which is a requirement of our certification. Government updates have been communicated through media platforms such as the website and our Facebook page. So that's obviously a little bit more of relaxing of the rules as we're into April now. And as far as incidents and safety, security again is our highest risk. We recently carried out a tabletop exercise with the police, which included a security breach scenario. This is a requirement of our Part 139 certification. Again, it's really about building relationships with our local emergency agencies. And it's just so paramount that we do that. And it just gives them an understanding, I guess, of the lay of the land here, what resources Taupō Airport has in the event of an emergency, and whom that they should be contacting. So yeah, so that's probably about it for me. Reece may wish to add something.
Yeah, so I'll jump in just on the last one. So that interagency stuff is really important and something we're probably not that great at locally, but we are building on it. So lately our relationship with interagency partners has been growing quite a bit. The police contacted me on Friday just about looking, and they're being proactive about this as well, about coming through our facility and ensuring that they are up to speed with processes, procedures, how the airport works, peak flight times, who to contact in the event of an emergency, things like that. So just really good interagency liaison, which I think is just super important. We did have an incident on the boundary of the airport not long ago, and interestingly, the police officer in charge of it was actually a good friend of mine, and he said, I couldn't get hold of you and I didn't actually know who else to call. So making sure we've got those contacts in place is really important. And as Kim said, it's actually part of our 139. Emergency planning is a big part of what Kim's job is. So yeah, that's some good stuff to get involved with.
Thanks, Reece. Okay, move that we receive General Manager's report. Christine, myself or Kathy, thank you. Right, I will move on to the financials. I hand it to you, Danielle.
Oh, I'll just try and share the screen. Cool, can everyone see that?
You can see that, Danielle. Thank you.
That's going to be the agenda, but I just think it's sometimes easier just to point it out. So these are the profit and loss up to February. So I guess the key items here, so Kim's already talked about this. Oh,
apologies, Danielle. Could you just blow that up just a tad for those who are working on a small screen? Thanks. Awesome. Thank you.
Is that better?
Thank you.
Cool. So I guess the key items here are the landing charges. So Kim's already talked about the flight schedules, but just from financials versus SOI. So February was in line with SOI. January was 2K above, and December was 4K below because we only had that kind of the end tail of it being back to normal. The passenger terminal charges over the 3 months, we were in line with SOI. Then the leave, further favourable there just due to leave taken, giving a credit to the P&L. One of the key favourable variances here is contractors, and that's really just the budget for the safety manager is a lot higher than what we're seeing for the actuals there. So it was about 2.5K in the SOI per month, and our actuals are about averaging about $800 per month for him. The other items are the maintenance lines. So if you kind of group them all, those three lines together, you're about 12K unfavourable. So majority of that is the grass runway maintenance that Kim mentioned earlier, and some of it is also the signage that she mentioned, which I probably could actually move to assets, so we might move that out for next month. And then the next item here is the cropping expenses. So we've just had a significant increased established costs than we expected. And I think that's the kind of the main items. Does anyone have any questions? So obviously it's year to date, so some of it we've kind of talked about before. So I don't want to reiterate everything.
All in all, not too bad. The one blowout, which we'll discuss later.
Oh, yeah. So our overall after depreciation before tax is the 248k loss, which is 5k below SOI. So the next item is a statement of cash flows. So what I've done here is a little bit different to the previous reports. So because we've got kind of the operating cash flow and the project cash flow that needs to stay quite separate, but we've got the GST due from the project kind of going through the operating cash flow. I thought I'd just kind of separate it out to hopefully make it a bit clearer. So all in all, once we kind of clear all that GST away that relates to the project, the 103 is the operating cash balance at the end of February. So this is before any cropping has been paid, and also the project is 4.7 million. Any questions on that?
Straightforward, thank you.
The next one is the balance sheet. Now, I guess just from a improvement perspective, is what I was wondering is whether you going forward, whether you want to see this standard balance sheet that's more for what you'd see in the financials kind of half yearly and yearly, or whether it'd be better if I expanded on certain items, like do aging for the trade debtors and kind of show what makes up like trade payables or other payables. Because
that information is quite good to see in an expanded format, just in case there's a pattern developing with some of the debtors.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so would you still want to see all of it, and then I can just expand on a couple of points?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, cool. So I guess just with the other payables for this month, so most of that is project accruals. So about 343k. We also owe TDC money, so for things that they've paid for that we need to pay them back for. So that's getting up to 100k, and also the crop is in there. Any questions on the balance sheet? No. So the next item is the project report, which I'm sure Panel has already shared with you in the steering committee, or most of you in the steering committee meetings. The key item here, I guess, is the contingency. So we still have some left, which is great news. We've spent about 65% now. So the 272 of the full 417k of contingency. And year-to-date spend, or not year-to-date, project spend to date is 3.8 mil up to February. Any questions on that?
No, so we move that the financial reports be received.
Yep, happy to.
Thank you, and I'll
Happy
second.
Okay.
Thank you. The all important cash flow forecast. Thank you. Item 4.3.
Yeah. Sorry, was this one of the items that you wanted to move into confidence, or was it? No, this is where.
Well, okay, we could move this if it is solely related to the outcome of the cropping. We should move it into confidence in.
Is it the bulk of the work in that, Danielle, in this?
It's part of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll include that in the next part then.
Yeah.